Hello there, good afternoon and welcome to The Pulse. We are coming to you live from our studios here in Accra. We are live on your digital terrestrial TV because we're free to air as well. DSTV channel 421 and GoTV channel 144. This is Joy News, independent, fearless and credible. That's what we are. Of course, this afternoon on The Pulse, the COVID-19 pandemic is not over. The Ghana Health Service warning as it calls for public precautions and also outlines measures to scale up vaccinations across the country.
So what's our outlook going forward? Our various interventions contribute to a general reduction in the cases, but this is not to say that the pandemic is over. It's not over at all.
Well, so exactly what does the Ghana Health Service intend to do with scaling up vaccination across the country? We'll tell you more here on The Pulse. And voting right of Deputy Speaker while presiding over parliamentary proceedings remains intact as Supreme Court affirms its March 9 judgment. We'll hear from the man at the center of the legal tussle. Justice Abdulai will be my guest here on The Pulse. Please stay.
The review application is very strict and the grounds clearly stated, and one needs to find his case within the threshold set for a review application.
And our legal strike remains unchanged. That's the announcement by the Civil and Local Government Staff Association, CLOGSAG Ghana, as it mounts pressure on government for the controversial neutrality allowance.
I'm going to negotiate. If you also want to go and negotiate. What are that going to do with me? So on. It is on live. It is on live.
We'll get the concerns of the group here on The Pulse. My name is Blessed Sogah. Don't forget that The Pulse, as always, is brought to you by Global Communities Dignilu, affordable, safe sanitation. We're streaming live as well on YouTube, and all of our social media handles is at JoyNews on TV. Tweet at us with the hashtag The Pulse. My personal handle is at Blessed Sogah. Thanks for choosing us. This is Joy News. Well, so after months of heated public and legal debates, the Supreme Court has brought closure to the matter of voting rights of a deputy speaker. The court, in a unanimous 9-0 decision, ruled that its decision that allowed a deputy speaker to vote while presiding over proceedings is valid. Private legal practitioner Justice Abdulai, who found the matter, had wanted the court to set aside its judgment, saying the judges got it wrong. Well, the judges disagree with him. Court correspondent Joseph Abdulai has the rest of the story.
Mr. Abdulai had argued the court's March 9 judgment ignored legislative antecedents of the voting history of deputy speakers in Ghana. He added that failure of the ordinary bench to consider portions of Ghana's constitution and the Parliament Act of 1965 meant the court got it wrong. Deputy Attorney General Diana Sunaba Dapa disagreed. She insisted the review threshold had not been met, a position the court upheld, dismissing the application for review. The Deputy AG is not surprised.
The review application is very strict and the grounds clearly stated, and one needs to find his case within the threshold set for a review application, that exceptional circumstances which has occasioned a grave miscarriage of justice, and there are new information that has been discovered which was not present at the time of the determination. I do not think, even without going through the review application, any argument advanced by the plaintiff on the basis that the court ought to have had regard to previous constitutions and other statutes of the Commonwealth will still have held. As you clearly heard, our constitution, which is a written one, is sui generis and ought to be interpreted in accordance with its peculiar nature. And so reference to other constitutions, even previous constitution, is no basis.
Mr. Abdulai says the odds were up against him.
Prior to today, I had made it clear that a review application is probably one of the most difficult things to succeed in at the Supreme Court. And so I knew the odds were against me. Indeed, some had predicted 1:100. I had predicted almost 0, except that I still moved forward with this because, in principle, as I said, I believe that the Supreme Court is made of seasoned lawyers, and if you make strong arguments before them, they were amenable to reviewing their decisions, their previous decisions. as it turns out, they decided otherwise. And once they've decided otherwise, I think we have to move on as a nation. What I didn't want was a situation where posterity would question us.
This brings an end to the dispute over the voting rights of a deputy speaker. For JoyNews from the Supreme Court, my name is Joseph Akablay.
Well, so that's the update from the Supreme Court. It's clear now that the Supreme Court will not vary from its earlier ruling on the matter. But what does the man at the center of all this think about the ruling today? Joining us now is Justice Abdulai. He's a legal practitioner. Thank you, sir, for joining us here on the poll. So for many, this is just a waste of everyone's time. Is that what you think as well about today's exercise?
Absolutely not. And I think that would be unfortunate if that is the thought of anyone, to think that going to the Supreme Court is a waste of time or resources. I think that is not a nationalistic thinking. It's not a patriotic thought if that is how a person looks at things of this nature.
In fact, what's instructive is that you admitted that when you granted an interview to JoyNews after the ruling today, you told us that the odds were against you. It presupposes that you were in for an exercise in futility. That it was as simple as that, isn't it?
That is a wrong assumption. It is rather the case that I admit that going for a review was a daunting task. The odds were naturally against me. That is not to say that what I was going for was an impossibility. But assuming that was even the case, it reaffirms the position that once there was a window of opportunity, it's common sense would dictate that, considering the nature of the judgment, I take advantage of that window of opportunity, just so we would all be on the safer side of posterity. If judgment was passed on us, that we did everything that was within our rights to ensure that things were done for this country the best way we could. But this was the outcome of those decisions that we took. And I think it's given the opportunity 100 times, I'll take the same decision 100 times.
Interesting. And what exactly was your expectation? You were expecting that the Supreme Court judges would admit your concerns. There are two issues actually on the quorum and on the approval of the budget. Particularly, where were you, placing your hopes that at least would have a leeway from the Supreme Court?
I wasn't going for a least because I as far as I know, I made a very good case, a strong case for a review of the decision. But my views are not necessarily the views of the Supreme Court. If you read the application for review, whoever has read it would tell you that it was a well-researched and well-thought-out application that was filed. But we should all remember that the Supreme Court operates with two main principles, particularly guiding it when dealing with review applications. That one of which is to ensure that they do not open a floodgate for reviews, and the second being that they do not want to use a review application as a way for losing parties to really, in fact, an appeal to be used as a cloak for a review. So the idea is to narrow the route for a review, and you go through the law books, you find that review applications seldomly get positive responses from the Supreme Court. But that is not to say that it's an impossibility. It was worth the fight. It was worth every single minute of my time and resources. And as I've indicated,
well, you don't sound like the usual Justice Abdulai. Are you discouraged by the ruling that we're seeing today from the Supreme Court?
I'm sure you can see that I'm very tired.
Well, but you tell me that what you've presented before the Supreme Court was a well-researched document. What was different from the argument you were making earlier?
It is not the differences in the argument. It is the flesh and the amount of the volume of authorities that re-emphasized the position that the Supreme Court erred in their previous decision, and judging by the various authorities around and what we are used to from the past all the way to today. And so and there are a plethora of authorities, and indeed in the Constitution provides yet further authorities that giving a more holistic view, I strongly believe that the Supreme Court would have had judgment in my favor. But this is what they believe, and I think that once the Supreme Court has spoken, there is no any other means of getting the decision reviewed or reversed unless a different matter goes before the Supreme Court. For instance, like the case of the Higher Inducement of the Attorney General, if it goes through the merit, possibly, or in future, if any other case goes before the Supreme Court, they have the complete authority to depart from Justice Abdulai as Attorney General and come up with a new decision. So it's not all lost yet, but as to when, that is
we'll see about that. But in fact, the grounds on which you're challenging the Supreme Court has two legs, particularly when you're looking at it from the aspect of the empirical evidence. It appears that the Supreme Court has quite a sound reasoning, admitting without, necessarily siding with the Supreme Court on this. The fact that if you look at the membership of Parliament, there's a need for the Deputy Speaker to represent his people, and that was part of the legal reasoning of the court. So why do you disagree with what some experts have described as a strong position by the Supreme Court?
I do disagree on that, not on the basis that I'm saying that they do not have their right, but I think it's because we have miscalculated that particular position or misjudged it. My position has always been very clear that so long as you are presiding, that's the time that you lose your voting rights. And that is not the only instance that a person loses his voting rights, even though they still represent their constituents. I think we should be very clear in our minds that there are several instances where members of Parliament lose their voting rights. And being a Deputy Speaker is just one of such instances that I think that member of Parliament should lose his voting right. Remember, that's the member of Parliament, when once he becomes the Deputy Speaker, does not only lose his voting right, but he also loses his opportunity to be a Minister of State. Why are they not complaining about that? Because they admit that a Speaker cannot be a Minister of State. If a Speaker cannot be a Minister of State, and what circumstances can a Speaker then be doubled as a member of Parliament at the time that he's speaking, at the time that he's acting as a Speaker of Parliament. So the position, however, and then remember that the black and white law that have stated categorically under the Parliamentary Act that a member of Parliament, once you're acting or presiding, you cannot retain your original voting rights. This has always been the law from 1957 all the way until 1967, thereabout.
If you look at the implications of what you're asking the Supreme Court to do, for instance, there's the argument. What I asked them, because we are no longer before the Supreme Court. Okay, I get that very clearly. But if you look at the argument about proportionality, there's the concern about the implications of what you're asking or were asking the Supreme Court to do. The fact that would have obviously implications not just for the 2022 budget, but also some of the issues that we've gone past. For instance, the controversial subject of the electronic transactions levy. Were you mindful of all of these sets of facts before proceeding to the Supreme Court?
Indeed, I was mindful of that, but that would be a short-sighted way of looking at events, particularly of the law. You do not just take into consideration just an event of today to make a decision that has a far-reaching consequence on our entire nationhood. That is a wrong way of looking at things. Building a nation and in making laws do not take into consideration simply the events of today. It has to take into consideration the past and the future, not just today. You do not confine yourself, imprison yourself when particularly with regards to constitutional matters. And that is why we always have said that the Constitution is a growing document because it has to look into the future and not confine itself to matters of today.
The argument, finally, is that you have another opportunity. At least you may not be a party to that case, but we know that some members of the minority side of Parliament are heading to court over another issue, demanding some interpretations on the quorum and asking for the ultimate halt of the electronic transactions levy. Is that another moment where you believe that the Supreme Court will vary its decision on matters?
I do not believe that at all. Even though it's an opportunity, but we should remember that almost every constitutional matter is an opportunity for the Supreme Court to depart from their decision in the Justice Abdulai and Attorney General's case, particularly when it borders on those issues involving Parliament. So it's not as if the Supreme Court is really boxed in a way that they cannot come out of that. Except that rather than granting a review application, that's the route the Supreme Court would always take. They rather have a fresh case and use that fresh case to depart from a previous decision, unless they are so convinced that maybe they should grant it. And if you check our law books, the instances where the Supreme Court have granted this are very few. And so, yes, to that extent, I would say that there is indeed a possibility that the Supreme Court may rely on the Attorney General, Haruna Idrisu as Attorney General, to probably depart from Justice Abdulai. But that is a completely remote under the circumstances because we do not have the argument of Haruna Idrisu or the Attorney General at hand at the moment. We only have the benefit of the writ and the relief they seek. And those may not be enough to make any value judgment of the present circumstances.
Is this the end of the road?
To the extent of the issues of parliamentary voting and quorum formation, this is the end of it. This is the new law. This is what we have to accept. We all have to embrace it, and we have to make the best out of it. We probably have to engage ourselves more often, dialogue more often, and see how best we can come together as one nation and put our differences aside and see how best we can make better use of this new law, this new phenomenon. I think it is the best way we can win as a country and not necessarily fight each other. Of course, unless the fighting and the scuffles going on are part of the growing processes. Sometimes, as part of the growing process, we go through some of these difficulties. And so we evolve, and I expect that the evolution would see less of the scuffles that goes on in Parliament and more of dialogue and commitment to nationhood and possibly citizens' patriotic participation in nation building and demanding accountability and ensuring that we get the best out of our leaders. I think this probably may be the best way out of this whole event. But of course, we should always expect that I would always be a citizen. That is what I would want to do for this country.
Well, we'll have to leave it here. Thank you so much for joining us. That's Justice Abdulai. He's a private legal practitioner.
For God and country always.
And I'm grateful. Well, so there's a need for us to turn our attention to and look at some of the trending matters. The COVID-19 pandemic is not over. That's according to the Ghana Health Service. The service says, although various interventions have actually contributed to the general reduction in cases, there's still the need for precaution as some countries are experiencing a worse form of the pandemic. With an active case count of 40 infections, the health service says it is racing against time to scale up vaccinations, which is the most effective way of dealing with this. And you have the numbers on your screen now. You have the total number of doses administered to date, 25th of April 2022. So that's the national outlook for you. 14,268. Then we have 14 million, actually, 268,269. That's the total outlook. In terms of the breakdown of the types of vaccines that have been administered. You have AstraZeneca representing a little over 9 million doses. We have Sputnik V as well, 17,982. It's by far one of the lowest in terms of administration. We have Moderna. Moderna has a little over 1 million doses. We have Pfizer as well, representing some 2.6 million doses. And we have the Johnson & Johnson, which is representing some 1.4 million doses, all making up the 14.2 million doses administered to date. Now, we know that persons receiving at least a dose represent some 9.4 million, representing some 47.5% of the 20 million population or target that the Ghana Health Service was initially aiming at. But we know that figure has been revised as well, and that's the distribution for you. But in terms of the breakdown as to male and female, there's a clear indication that we're getting from the Ghana Health Service, which gives us a clear indication that we have more of the female population vaccinating more than the men. And there you have it, a breakdown of the figures for you. The male representing 45.8%, and then the female population is 54.2%. But in terms of the rural-urban divide, it's clear that most of the persons that we find resident in the rural areas don't have much of the administration going there, 37.7%. And then you have the urban areas representing 62.3%. So that's the distribution of persons receiving at least one dose by sex and then the area where they're resident. And that's where the Ghana Health Service comes in. In fact, the Director General of the Health Service, Dr. Patrick Kumabwaji, says there would still be the need to adhere to the COVID-19 protocols, especially the issue of wearing of nose masks.
I don't wear a mask. Mine is here. Well, the president said it's not compulsory. He didn't say don't wear it. I think that's what I heard. He said it's not mandatory. He didn't say don't wear. The risk is still there. And so we recommend that where possible, wear your mask. And especially when you are in an enclosed and a congested place, you need to. I won't enter a lift without a mask. You know, a small place, 8 people, you never know. You know, so the most important, enclosed and congested places, where possible, wear your mask. If you are in an aircraft, small tube, 50, 60 people, 1 hour, 25 minutes, 45 minutes, nothing, no air exchange. I don't think it is right. It will be safer to wear your this thing. Schools, we encourage that they continue wearing their mask because 15 years and below, those below 15 years have not been vaccinated. So they still remain a threat, a potential threat to them. And I think once you look at the enclosed and congested place, you can define yourself. You can, as I said, define which one is enclosed and congested, whether it's an office, whether it's in a banking hall, you need to wear. But we are grateful to the banks for ensuring, insisting that everybody must continue to wear their mask. Yeah. So what's our outlook going forward? Our various interventions have contributed to a general reduction in the cases, but this is not to say that the pandemic is over. It's not over at all. Some countries are experiencing a worse form of the pandemic, as we just mentioned. So we need to maintain our focus at preventing the worst case scenario. But vaccination, that is the most important intervention that we need now so that we can all be free and go up about business. We have enough vaccines and it's free, so the message is let's get vaccinated and still let's provide some of the protection, some of the hand washing, etc. has served us in many ways beyond COVID.
Well, so that's the indication we're getting from the Ghana Health Service. We'll definitely keep our eyes on that. But there's another development that we're monitoring for you here on the Pulse as well. The Civil and Local Government Staff Association, Ghana, have been justifying its demand for the controversial neutrality allowance. At a news conference earlier today, the group insists it will continue with its strike until government fulfills its promise to pay them all arrears owed. Isaac Bampoado is the Executive Secretary for CLOGSAG.
You see, the neutrality allowance by the name does not justify the allowance. The name neutrality allowance is not justified by the name. The justification for any allowance is done at the negotiation table. It's not done in the media. It's done at the negotiation table. That's where we do justification for whatever allowance. And that's according to the labor laws of Ghana. We went to negotiations. The government team was led by the master strategist of the government, Honorable Osafo Mafu, with his personal assistants. We had finance ministry there represented by Abina, the deputy minister of finance, with his technical people. Fair Wages and Salaries Commission were there. They brought two lawyers plus their technical team. Employment was there. And of course, CLOGSAG was there, led by my good self. Now, so if you people are saying that we have outwitted and played a fast one on them, it's negotiation. Then we should be congratulated for doing a good job. Because that's what negotiation is all about. And mind you, this neutrality allowance that is only a minute part of our broader conditions of service. There are more goodies that we've already finished about 80%. We don't do double work. We're going to justify at the negotiating table and then some people are asking questions. We don't do double work. Me, I don't do double work. If you want to do double work, you can work with double work. But we don't do double work. We've justified whatever allowances that we've been given at the negotiating table. It's been signed and sealed. Signed and sealed. So if you don't understand, what? Go and sleep. Go and sleep. Or go to court. Go and sleep. Agbeda. 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 Next question. I said, go and sleep. That's my answer. Go and sleep. Agbeda.
So those who are saying that.
Agbeda. We what Agbeda? Whatever they want to do, they can do. Me, I'm going to negotiate. If you also want to go and negotiate. What are they going to do with me?
So finally, is your strike still on?
It is on. It is on live. It is on live. My friend, go and sleep. Any question? Yeah.
A clear indication from CLOGSAG. They are also accusing the Trade Union Congress of acting in bad faith, reason they will not march alongside them on Sunday.
Besides harping on the economic challenges in Ghana, the TUC General Secretary veered into raising salaries to reflect inflation rates. He made the following remarks: if we speak and the government and employers do not hear us, then we will do what unions do. We hardly embark on strike because it is a very difficult thing to do. It is like war. So before we declare war, we have to make sure we have a good reason. Finally, he added that, and this is the time.
Someone's supposed to join.
We have to change this. This is a time we must ensure that we just don't talk, but start they listen and hear. If the government pretends not to hear us because it pretends to be sleeping, then we should do what unions do. The civil and local government of Ghana would wish to stake unequivocally that it was not party to such decision and disassociates itself from such threats. It must be emphasized that CLOGSAG is a registered union and has the right to bargain for its constituents on its own terms. In reality, this has been the focus of CLOGSAG in channeling its activities and the common good of its members. To some, the threat of nationwide strike by the TUC contradicts the 1st March 2020 Kwao Declaration, when some of the sections of the community stated, as referred, the 14, improve coordination between Fair Wages and Salaries Commission and the Ministry of Finance and all other relevant agencies to determine clearly annual wage baskets allowed for negotiations. This means that there's a limit to the quantum of money for negotiations, and this will be determined by the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission and then the Ministry of Finance. The declaration was signed by the TUC on the blind side of other unions. The TUC is throwing dust into the eyes of workers.
Well, Paramount Chief of the Laura Traditional Area, Na Kabo III, is urging chiefs to rather lead their subjects on the path of socio-economic development, not war. The chief was speaking during the enskinment of the Na Dakwat II. The chief of Babili Traditional Area has been without a chief for 23 years. JoyNews' Upper West Regional Correspondent, Rafiq Salam, has the rest of the story.
The colorful ceremony, which was replete with the rich culture and tradition of the Babili area, was attended by sons and daughters of the Babili Traditional Area, including paramount chiefs, divisional and sub-chiefs in the Laura Traditional Area. The Laura Traditional Area is made up of 8 divisions, 8 sub-chiefs and 200 chiefs. The last time a similar ceremony was held to inskin a chief for the Babili area was almost 3 decades ago, when the late Na Abeifa Kabu II enskinned Na Kudakwa II, who reigned for 6 years before he passed on. Ever since the demise of Na Kudakwa II, there have been a protracted dispute which is not about who will succeed him, but which paramount chief has the right to perform the rites for his coronation. Regent of Babili, Vatus Kadwei, before the enskinment, explained that since the days of yore, it has always been the preserve of the Lorana to enskin chiefs at Babili, and today's ceremony was set to repeat in itself.
About 3 decades ago, a similar function was performed by Na Abeifa Kabo here on the same ground. And today, we are privileged to have his younger brother, one of the doyens, to perform the same function.
Paramount Chief of Laura and President of the Laura Traditional Area, Napo Wele Kabo III, therefore has the onerous duty to perform the enskinment rites, as was done close to 30 years ago by his predecessor, Na Abeifa Kabo II. It was therefore refreshing for the people of the area when kingmakers of Babili settled on 56-year-old educationist Na Dakwa, known in private life as Francis Kadwei Sapor, for the Babili skin for him to be guided through the rituals. Napo Wele Kabo III, after the enskinment, set the rules for the newly enskinned sub-chief as he begins his new life.
Suffice it to state that by your acceptance to be part of this noble institution, you have assumed a new personality, so to speak. As chiefs, you are to live exemplary lives worthy of emulation. Your conduct henceforth will be regulated. It is significant to note that some of the things we used to do as ordinary persons, like eating meat in the market, drinking in public places, etc., etc., you cannot do them again. Above all, you are expected to hold yourself out in dignity and not bring your name and the revered institution into disrepute at all times.
King Sub-Chief, as he begins his new life, aware of the challenges in the area, Napole Cabo III tasked the new chief to solve the challenges and work to partner government and other development partners to get the needed development for the area.
I can state without any fear of contradiction that there is a chief in every hamlet, village, town, and city in the country. And in most communities not touched by central government services, the chief's palace serves as the meeting place for the dissemination of government policies by visiting officials and a focal point for the mobilizing the people for development. This therefore means that your palace should be accessible to all people at all times. Furthermore, the role of the chief today is not to lead his people into war of organization for territory, but to lead your people in the path of socio-economic development. I wish to remind you, therefore, that the progress of your subdivisional area, its honors and reputation will materially depend on the scale and determination with which you manage its concerns and development challenges.
Also enskinned alongside Nada Kwa was the Queen Mother of the area under the skin name Pogna Yirkuda Kwa the First. Reporting for JoyNews, Rafik Salam, Babili.
Now, the Lands and Natural Resources Ministry has assured it will fully implement the recommendations of the sole commissioner tasked to look into the circumstances leading to the illegal takeover of the Bulgarian embassy. Deputy Minister Benito Usobio gave his assurance when the former High Court Judge Kwesi Antol-Foriata presented his report to government.
In March, it emerged that the land occupied by the Bulgarian embassy had been sold to a private developer who demolished the structures on it and had made attempts to put up a new edifice. The minority expressed regret and asked government to take swift action. Government then ordered a freeze of ongoing works on the land until a determination is made. After 5 weeks of being commissioned, former High Court Judge Kwesi Antol-Foriata said his report is ready.
11 witnesses appeared to testify and tendered a large volume of exhibits. Some of the witnesses were recalled for re-examination. By the grace of God, I have completed work on the first 2 terms of reference, which are embodied in part 1 of the report, which I'm here to present to you, Honorable Minister. It is hoped work on terms of reference 3, 4, and 5 will be completed and presented in due course. As I express my deepest gratitude to you, Honorable Minister, for granting me the privilege and opportunity to serve the country in this capacity, I wish to solicit the continued support of all so that the remaining terms of reference will be successfully completed.
The full details of the report is yet to be made public, but Deputy Minister of Lands and Natural Resources said the recommendations will be taken up by government.
Today, on behalf of the Honorable Minister for Lands and Natural Resources, the Honorable Samuel A. Jinapo, I accept the report of the sole inquirer as to the terms of reference 1 and 2. The ministry will peruse the report and in due course make public the content thereof. A report relative to terms of reference 3, 4, and 5 will be presented later. The public is assured that the recommendations contained in this particular report would be considered by the ministry as appropriate directives will be issued for their implementation.
For JoyNews, Michael Ashale.
And thanks for staying with us here on The Pulse. When we return, we'll tell you more about COVID-19. It's all coming up here on the Pulse these days. And you're welcome back to the Pulse. Now, earlier you heard from the Ghana Health Service indicating that the COVID-19 pandemic is not over. In furtherance of that, the Greater Accra Regional Health Directorate has been scaling up its efforts to ramp up the numbers in terms of the vaccination exercise. Fortunately, we've been joined now by Eunice Jagli, who's the PRO for the Ghana Health Service, also to tell us about the national strategy and also what's been done in the national capital, which is obviously leading the charge in terms of infections. Thank you, Eunice, for your time here on the Pulse. So it appears that after the relaxation of the COVID-19 protocols, many are not even concerned about the virus any longer. Has that gotten to your tables at the Ghana Health Service?
Thank you. I wouldn't say officially that is on our table, but we all can see the response in the system as to how people are going about issues, and especially the response we had with the vaccination. The apathy and hesitancy shows that people are feeling as the government or the president had relaxed the observance of the protocols, it means COVID is gone, which is not true. The fact is, when we were masking up, the protection was even higher for individuals because majority were masking up. Protection is for those masking up and those around them. Now that we have stopped the masking up, it means that we are all at a higher risk. And the worst of it is we have not yet reached a vaccination point where we will say the system had developed what we call herd immunity, an ideology that proves that when a majority are vaccinated, the protection they have protect the few that are not vaccinated, which means in the system we are talking about 95% of our target population for the vaccination. When they vaccinate, then we know the few that have not vaccinated can take cover with the majority. But as we speak, out of the over 30 million Ghanaians we have, we can only boast of about 30 million to 40 million people vaccinated. That tells you that the number vaccinated, at least taking one dose, the number vaccinated is far too low for us to relax and feel we are okay to go and then we are protected. So yes, the realization had come on the observance of the protocols, but we still have cases of COVID. And you and I knew the COVID started with 2 persons, and we had a lot of story to tell. And those who love loved ones, those who experience the COVID themselves will tell you it's a serious issue. So we all need to vaccinate to ensure that we get ourselves protected as well as our families protected. And if you look at it from this angle, then the numbers that are vaccinating, and especially the response during this just ending national vaccination, is an issue to worry. It means, therefore, that we still have a larger population not protected. And if there should be an outbreak again, then there will be problem for us to handle. I think that is the concern the Director General has, to encourage us to go back and get ourselves vaccinated.
But you know, when the announcements were made by the president, clearly a lot of people felt it's now a case where obviously infections had gone below the line, which could bring back the contagion. So what's accounting for instance, that situation where we have people not going out willingly to take the vaccinations and to adhere to the other protocols that were laid out?
Can you please come, Claire? I didn't hear you.
Yeah, so I was talking about the relaxation of the protocols. Obviously, when it was announced by the president, the belief was that the infections had gone below the line. And I guess that's what was accounting for the carefree behavior of many out there.
Yes, it's true that the announcement, people felt then it means we are out of the woods. But then the fact is that we started with 2 cases, and then we struggled. So if we still have cases, it means therefore that we still have a situation at hand to handle. I think the president was being kind to us to ensure we move about our work with precaution. That is why at the end of that statement, he mentioned we should all go for our vaccination, because he knew very well that when we go for the vaccination, we'll be protected. So he wants us to be productive. He wants us to be around to do what we can do to support the system and ourselves. And he wants us to take the needed protection in the vaccination. I think that is why the government had done all it could to ensure we have the vaccine in country for everybody to be vaccinated. So if all has gone into getting the vaccine in and we have refused to take the vaccine, then the support the government wants to give us to ensure that we get the needed protection and go about our daily duties and get productive will not be fulfilled. So it is left to us as individuals, as family members, as friends, to ensure that we go to do the vaccination ourselves. We get the friends we have around, the family members we have around to go and vaccinate. I heard people talking about they had the first jab and they felt sick, fever, weakness, and so on and so forth. But I want to use this opportunity to tell all those who are listening to us that shows that the vaccine is working, because every vaccine, as we know, is to sensitize the body for the body to develop the needed immunity. And what the vaccine does is to bring about the symptoms of the condition that you are being vaccinated against. So the body will now develop the needed immunity. So when the real disease comes, the body had already prepared and will be able to fight and overcome. So those who had the jab and had those conditions and felt as a result of that they shouldn't go in, they were the people developing the best immune, and they were now shining away from the vaccination. So they should go and take the subsequent one. That will complete the process they have started to build the immunity to protect themselves and to protect others. And we are saying that,
and I guess at this point, the concern at this point, access. Where are the centers you've created, and how accessible are they to the general public, particularly here in the Greater Accra region?
Almost every government facility has a vaccination point. So when you walk to every government facility, you have access to the vaccine. And we have some private facilities too, where we usually do such a program. When you go to those facilities too, you get your jab. And if you go and there is no vaccinator at the point, they will direct you to the nearest place to get your jab. And I think they are accessible more than you can imagine. You shouldn't walk beyond a reasonable distance to get a vaccination point to vaccinate.
So there's the question about pregnant women, the controversy surrounding whether or not they are eligible in this process that you're running now. What do you have to tell such persons who are pregnant or perhaps lactating mothers as well?
Thank you. Pregnant women are eligible to take the vaccine. Data reveal that it has no side effects on the baby or the fetus. So pregnant women can take all the vaccines now. Lactating mothers can take them, and it will have no harm on them or the unborn baby. So they are all encouraged. It's even rather they that needed it, because data from our system show how pregnant women were suffering and how it affected the pregnancy. So when you go and protect yourself with the vaccination, you protect the unborn baby too, and you make the period safer for you, so you don't get contracted and now struggle to see how to protect the baby and yourself. So the vaccination is the best option for pregnant women as we speak when it comes to COVID-19.
And are you also reviewing the age bracket that can go in for the vaccination?
The age bracket,
yes.
You know, we started from 18 years, but now we are including from 15 and above. So everyone from 15 years and above will go for vaccination. So if you turn 15, you can go for your vaccination. If you have taken your first jab and you have not gone for the second one, and it is more than 4 weeks, you can go for your second jab. If you have taken your mandatory jabs, then you have to go for the booster, just to make sure you develop the needed immunity for your protection and the protection of your family.
And there are concerns also about preference for single dose vaccines. For instance, the Johnson & Johnson, as we understand, is a single dose vaccine. The concern is that due to that preference that we have from the general public going in to be selective about the type of vaccine they're taking, it's also affecting your operations. How so?
Thank you. Now, we have the Johnson & Johnson, we have the Pfizer, and we have the AstraZeneca. They are all in the vaccination centers. So if you go and you have a preference among these three, nobody will prevent you from taking them. So we have at least 3 for anyone who have preference to choose from. So I don't think preference should be an issue now for anybody to avoid the vaccination. We have it. So they should come out and take it for their protection.
Finally, ever since you stepped up the vaccination process, how would you describe the exercise so far? And what do you have to say about how the public is receiving your decision to go out there to expand access to the various vaccination centers?
You know, the vaccination had been on for a long time now, since March last year. But for the national campaign, that is what we are doing now, which is the second round of the national campaign, that is to make available the vaccine to everybody, wherever you are at hot time. The previous one was better than what we are experiencing now. Some of the concern that we received was our friends, the Muslims. Some are complaining they are fasting, so they wouldn't take the vaccination. But in fact, I came across a release from or a document from the Muslim community or the clerics who are saying that you can still take your jab whilst fasting. So to my friends, the Muslims, please, we understand you can still take it. That is also a factor that is affecting the turnout for the vaccination. And besides that, people, for reasons that are not something that should prevent them for maybe not getting the right understanding or explanation to concerns they have, are also shying away from the vaccination. So the turnout actually is not the best, it's not encouraging. That is why we want to use all avenues to encourage everybody who are taking first, who have not taken at all, who have finished the mandatory, to all go back and take their vaccination, so that at the end of the day, we can get 95% of our population, target population, vaccinated. When we get to that point, we can all live a free life and be happy and be productive and work together to build better Ghana for ourselves.
We have currently 40 active cases. What's the projection going forward? What's the projection like? Are these people severe patients, or they are likely to recover very quickly in the coming days?
Thank you. Sometimes it's not just ABCD to say we can say they will recover, they will not recover. It depends on a number of conditions. So what we are concerned about now is not to have people in that situation. So to prevent that from happening, for us to think of what to be their condition in the next few weeks or days, we would rather prefer to talk about those who have not vaccinated to go and vaccinate than speaking to those who are already in the condition, and we are trying to see what we can do to help them overcome and get healthy. So I think that is even what we should be concerned about, that if we have 40 cases now, it means if we don't do the right thing, we may be in trouble, because we started with 2 cases. I continue to stress on that. We started with 2 cases and it was an issue. So if we have 40 active cases, that tells you we can run into trouble if we don't do what is right by vaccinating, getting sure we vaccinate and get our families and friends also to vaccinate.
All right, then. We'll have to leave it here. Eunice, thank you so much for spending some time with us this afternoon. Now, $412 million. That's how much government needs to execute a 5-year national malaria strategic plan. Now, according to government, the said amount will be channeled to interventions that would reduce malaria mortality by 90% and achieve malaria pre-elimination in at least 5 or 6 districts by 2025.
Despite several interventions being implemented to fight malaria, including the introduction of vaccines, it remains the #1 cause of outpatient attendance in Ghana. According to the Ghana Health Service, 5.7 million malaria cases were recorded in 2021, with Ghana listed among the 11 countries with the highest malaria burden worldwide. The National Malaria Control Program therefore launched the National Malaria Strategic Plan in 2021 to fight the deadly disease caused by the Plasmodium parasite transmitted by the bite of an infected mosquito. The 3 main goals of the 5-year program are to reduce malaria mortality by 90%, reduce case incidence by 50%, and achieve malaria pre-elimination in at least 6 districts by 2025. However, speaking at the commemoration ceremony of the 2022 World Malaria Day in Hohwe, the National Malaria Control Program Manager, Dr. Kezia Mam, announced that her outfit is financially handicapped in implementing the strategic plan.
There are challenges, however. Currently, with the strategic plan, we have a gap of about $412 million for us to be able to fully implement that plan. We also need to ensure that we promote the advancements of newly proven interventions and scale it up to optimal levels.
Now, a chief economist at the Ministry of Finance, Emmanuel Fojo, is calling for the increase and also the reinforcement of tobacco control regulations. Now, according to him, the showcase and use of tobacco products such as cigar and shisha by celebrities on social media is a threat to the development of the nation. Emmanuel Fojo was speaking at the 22nd annual training of tobacco control program. Miles Numon has the rest of the story.
Tobacco is used by an estimated 1.14 billion people worldwide. Every year, about 8 million people die as a result of tobacco-related diseases. According to a report by leading experts with the International Commission to Reignite the Fight Against Smoking, global efforts to end smoking have stalled and require a drastic overhaul to prevent 1 billion people from dying in this century. In view of this, Chief Economist at the Ministry of Finance, Emmanuel Fojo, is urging government and other stakeholders to put in place some measures to conscientize the youth to channel their attention into productive sectors of the economy.
There are areas that we can conscientize the minds of these youth into productive sectors like agri, manufacturing, industry, so that at the end of the day, society will benefit from their energies, from their potentials, God-given potentials, and not to leave them to be gallivanting on social media, following either a footballer, a songwriter. Many of these people go on these platforms using in Ghana we call it cigars and all these things. And the effect of this, when the youth adapt to it or they become addicted to it, will be detrimental.
Director of Programs and Director for the West Africa Office at the African Capacity Building Foundation, Professor Sylvain Boku, also explained it is necessary for stakeholders to take a critical look at the use of tobacco. According to him, its usage by a large number of the population is likely to affect the productivity of a nation.
So you have about 20%, 15 to 20% of the population that are heavy smokers on the continent. And that may even be underestimated, because really it's very hard to get to go. You can't go from household to household, but this is an estimation that we have. And so, and if you take that population, and then you look at how much government is spending in terms of now you have COVID, now you have sustainable development goals, you have the government's own goals, and then you put all together that are requiring billions of dollars in order to achieve those goals, that you have to reduce now from those and spend on this 20% of the population that could have been healthy had not chosen to be smoking. If you're not healthy, you cannot be productive. And some of these diseases are diseases that they are non-communicable diseases. They are preventable diseases. When you're talking about cardiovascular diseases, so they can kill. And do often kill, or you are sick for a long time. You have lung disease for a long time from tobacco use, for example. So you cannot be a productive citizen of the country when you are sick.
Meanwhile, the government of Ghana passed the Public Health Act 851 in 2012 to take concrete steps to reduce tobacco use in the country. The law makes provision for the ban on smoking in public places, advertising, promotion, and sponsorship, among others. Mausi Nimons reports for JoyNews.
Let's save a life now. Management of the whole teaching hospital are doing something very unique, trying to save a heart to save a life. That campaign was launched here in Accra this morning, and we're privileged to have in studio with us Dr. John Tampori, Chief Executive Officer of the whole teaching hospital. Welcome, sir. Such a great time to be seeing you. It's good to be learning about this campaign, but first tell us about the campaign that you launched earlier this morning.
Yeah, the campaign is all about raising funds to support the development of our cardiothoracic center.
Right.
The cardiothoracic center was set up about 3 years ago, as 2019. And we have some level of human resource. We have cardiologists, physicians, 2 cardiothoracic surgeons, and other supportive staff. The main issue, however, has been equipment to improve on diagnosis and also for treatment, specifically surgical intervention to help cure people of their current cardiac conditions.
Right.
So the essence of this fundraising is to raise money for this. And we are targeting an amount of $3.2 million.
$3.2 million.
Yeah.
What's the time frame? How soon do you want to achieve that target, and what strategy are you deploying in raising that amount? Is it only what you did earlier today, or perhaps there are more activities coming up in the course of the day?
I'll come to the time frame, but we started this campaign about a year ago.
Okay.
And so we sensitized the community first, where we live and work. Then we did a float to create awareness about the condition and our plans to help find solutions to some of those conditions. We appeared on different media, both print and we have been doing that for some time. So today actually was just to have a dinner with stakeholders, a breakfast with stakeholders to create awareness and to officially launch the fundraising.
And what do you have to say about the reception? How are people responding to this noble cause that you're embarking on?
I think it was wonderful. It was, I think, beyond expectation.
Right.
We got there in the morning. We didn't expect as many as we met. And some people appeared when they heard about it, their own volition, even not invited. Yeah. And some really contributed. And some have made promises. Right. And we are hoping that we'll do the follow-up and get these promises fulfilled.
Right.
And together we'll be able to acquire the basic things that we need to be able to set up the enabling environment for proper treatment of these cardiac conditions.
And that also brings to the fore the issue about what the situation is within the locality itself. Is it the case that you're recording heart-related diseases in its numbers, and that's why you have decided also partly to stage this course?
Yeah, first of all, we'll try to do a follow-up to see the situation at our only cardiothoracic center at Kolebu. And that was before additional 6 regions were created. So if we had 10 regions, and close to a quarter of the conditions that were, the people who were reporting with that condition at Kolebu were related to the Volta region. So, and we looked into the community and we found out that a lot of those cases were coming, but eventually they were being referred to Kolebu because we didn't have the necessary equipment for proper diagnosis and we didn't have enough human resource also to do. So that necessitated the fact that we need to do something about it. That apart, the regional hospital was upgraded to a teaching hospital, again, 3 years ago. That means that the scope of activities also had to be widened and then, improved. So we were able to get cardiothoracic surgeons who came teaching, but they also need to put their expertise into practice. Skills are such that when you have them and you don't put them into use, they will disappear.
Right.
So there were a lot of things that came around and informed us that we need to do something like this.
By and large, would you say that the exercise is successful, or you're getting closer to the target that you've set for yourselves?
In terms of amount,
right,
I'm not able to say anything now.
Right.
But the response that we had today gives me the impression that we are going to be able to.
Are you expecting more? And what categories of persons are you expecting that kind of help from? Is it the case that you're open to the general public, or perhaps you're targeting some key institutions which you believe will be very helpful in this cause?
At times it's more effective if everybody is dropping something.
Right.
But obviously you will need to meet some key people who will be able to bring in chunks. And in some cases, some people may agree that, okay, looking at the equipment and so on, I can afford this and that and that. And we have people making those promises. But we are appealing to everybody. If even it's a CD, 2, 10, 20, if you look at the population of this country, the population of, say, the Volta region, that is enough to raise, if everybody will put in something, to raise a significant amount that will help us achieve this aim.
And obviously, I'm sure that many of our viewers now, and some other people who are reaching us through the various channels that we're beaming through, would want to reach out to you. Are there any platforms that you've created by which they could get in touch and to make their own donations as well?
I think the easiest way to go to our website, the Whole Teaching Hospital website. We have, you can even donate online. There are also certain banks that we are collaborating with, like APSA, like GCB, NIB, and others. And we have both dollar and CD accounts with them. These details I should have had.
But I'm sure if you walk into, for instance, the banks that you mentioned, obviously they've created channels that for you to do the contributions.
They have that, and they have poll-ups where you can have access to this information.
But I guess it's possible for people to also come over to the Volta region, come to the Whole Teaching Hospital and make their donations as well.
That would be wonderful.
Have you had some coming through already?
So far, yes. 1 or 2 people have done that. There have been charges from Whole who have walked in that, look, we hear you are doing this thing. This is our widow's mite, and we are so grateful to such organization. And we hope and pray that more will come. Like I said earlier, yes, bigger institutions can bring big amounts, but each and every one will drop something small. It might be more effective than the individuals who are bringing big amounts.
And what's also up there for many people is the diseases that we're talking about itself. The fact that some are not necessarily able to connect to them, and how delicate the situation you're talking about is. Are you able to give us a sense of the kind of cases that these funds will go into supporting?
I think when you look at the disease burden and even mortality, you realize that heart conditions has risen to a very high level. Because if those days we're talking about malaria and other infectious diseases, the situation has changed. Non-communicable diseases are becoming a very serious burden, and heart conditions is one of those. I'm sure a lot of these things happened and we don't even know that it is related to the heart. Obviously, when you don't have the necessary equipment for diagnostics, then for us, the simple way, because for us, there are 2 theories for diseases, not just the germ, but also the house. So once somebody dies and you are not able to tell exactly what the cause is, then you look for some old lady to blame for that. But most of these things could be just heart conditions. So it is a lot. And once we start going in, then we realize that more and more are coming. And that means that you need to create an enabling environment to
support these people. And that's why we need to laud the Whole Teaching Hospital for carrying out such a laudable initiative. But obviously, you also want to prevent the influx of more and more people who are falling prey to these heart conditions as well. Are you able to, and you are an expert, to, at least to some extent, to help us understand what happens and how someone out there could keep the heart healthy, and also general practices that would necessarily ensure safety out there?
Well, generally, almost all disease about lifestyle, your eating habits, exercise, and so many other things. So heart diseases are not an exception. But having said that, there are also hereditary aspects of it. But what is important is that no matter how well you prevent, you'll have 1 or 2 people coming out, even though they are following the necessary rules. And these people also need attention. And that is why this project is so dear to the heart of the management. And I must say that when you say whole teaching hospital, the impression will be that we are targeting Volta regional whole. No, it goes beyond that. Our coverage area, apart from current Volta and OT, parts of Eastern region, even parts of Greater Accra region. Then we go to the northern side, parts of the northern region, and even Upper East region.
So it's not as though you're even limiting your scope, because I was about asking that what if someone is out of this catchment area and wants to assess that help that you're providing? Are you open to that, or do you even have a criteria that would necessarily qualify some people outside the Volta region to come for help?
Well, when it comes to health, you can't have any criteria. It's about human
lives.
Yeah, but having said that, you see that when you look at the Eastern Corridor, the only effective workable cardio center we have is the only one we have in Ghana, the National Cardiothoracic Center in Kolebu. So when you have people coming all the way from the Upper East, Northeast, Northern, OT, Volta, the shortest route is actually through the Eastern Corridor. And Ho is very ideal for these kind of things. And another interesting thing is that our coverage goes beyond the Ghanaian borders. So you can talk about Togo, you can talk about Benin, and in some cases some parts of Nigeria bordering the Benin area. They all come to us.
So that's how critical this infrastructure is?
Very critical, very critical. Looking at the fact that even the pressure on Kolebu is so much. And indeed, experts say that about 2 million population, every 2 million population should have a center like that. So taken from there, that means that when you look at the regions, almost every region is up to that population. So we should be thinking about a center in each region. Everything starts from somewhere. We have one in Kolebu that effectively covers the Greater Accra region, but for now, the whole country. So if one comes to Ho, I believe that will not be the last stop. It will be an encouragement for others to set up in various areas. So it might spread over the country. And remember that in the health sector, and the policy is to get health closer to the patient. And so this will be one of the ways of fulfilling that project of USC.
And just as we wrap up on this conversation, I'm sure that you have a special message to persons who are touched by the conditions that you're talking about and what it is that you're doing at the whole teaching hospital. How ready are you to put the funds to good use? I guess that's also another concern that you'd also want to deal with while you send that message across.
Obviously, when you are giving money out, you need to be sure that the people who are taking it will not misapply it, and that it will be used for the purpose for which they are appealing for the fund. So to give credence, we have Price Waterhouse as our auditors. So they are going to audit and monitor the accounts. We have a dedicated account for the project, and we've tried to make it as transparent as possible, and we've gotten a team to manage it. And currently, one of our main fundraisers is international
organization?
Yeah, of Africa. So they do that. And so there wouldn't be any individual or group of individuals who can easily have access to it. It has to pass through a system. And like I said, some people may donate in form of equipment. So I just want to assure everybody that whatever you give will go for the right purpose and for the purpose for which we are asking for it. Feel, have the confidence that whatever you are contributing will go to the very cause for which you are contributing.
And we definitely at JoyNews here will support that cause. We're grateful that you've been able to join us, Dr. Tampori, but we also need to tell you about this. Thousands of residents in the north of the country have been found to be living with a fluorosis situation, which is a disease that causes the teeth to decolor. This is according to scientists at the Ghana Water Research Institute of the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, who studied the effects of the continuous reliance on ground water over a period of 4 years. Michael Komi is a senior researcher there and has been speaking at a workshop here in the Greater Accra region.
Besides geology is also a climate issue. You understand? So we appreciate that GLAMC is a problem affecting water quality. But with this particular studies, it was focused on groundwater quality, which we didn't look at GLAMC as a factor here. And we didn't come across GLAMC as a problem in that place. I will say a little bit and my colleague will add on. Fluoride is a very big issue. People who take fluoride has their teeth dented. It's called dental fluorosis, which means you see the person's teeth as if he has not been brushing teeth well, that the bone becomes brittle. At a higher concentration, even due to scleral fluorosis, where you see people walking with the bone again, like their legs are bent, like what. Even I felt animals who drink from that water. So that's one of the big issue of fluoride contamination. If we don't take care of that, it becomes a big problem. How bad is it? Because they cannot revive the treatment system. So what we are trying to do now is look at a local solution, where the people themselves will make their own treatment system. And when it is choked, we have what we call it. We have what we call boncha and biocha, where they use cattle bone or animal bone plus bone and any other charcoal. That is what we call activated carbon, like the one we use in the normal treatment system. But this one is going to be local made. And to make that kind of system, you need to have a structure that can be done at a very high temperature. So the local people will be taught how to do this kind of activated charcoal system that will absorb the fluoride from the water. And as time goes on, the activated charcoal will become full. It's like a hole. So they need to reactivate it. So that when they are taught how to do this kind of treatment, then we are having a solution to the problem, which will be more sustainable.
Have you set any timeline to start?
Now, after the exciting 2021 edition, the competition is back again with 499 schools facing off in the regional rounds of qualifiers to seal a spot for themselves. This is the beginning of what will eventually decide who will be the next winners after Prempeh College. Already 7 schools from the Bono and Western regions have booked their places in the national level. Now we know that this afternoon St. James Minor Seminary has cut its opponents to size by scoring some 53 points, the highest so far across the country. They say they are fired up for a great show this year for the National Science and Maths Quiz.
I will take for. Congrats from St. James Minor Seminary. They've just beaten their compatriots by what we've seen to be the highest set of scores in this round of regional qualifiers across the country. 53 good points. We've not seen that in the entire country. Let's talk to them briefly and find out how the excitement really is having beaten their compatriots. Of course, last year they couldn't really go so far in the competition. This year, they seem to be on fire. Congratulations, guys.
Thank you very much.
If I say I will take for, what do you say?
I will take for.
I will take for. I will take for. I will take for. Great. I mean, absolutely exciting contest that we saw. Really, really impressive. I mean, was this something that you had already planned? You were coming to cut the guys to pieces and then show everybody their size?
Okay, originally our plan was to cut everyone off, but we couldn't reach the target we had set for ourselves. But even though that wasn't able to be done, we are still grateful for what we have been able to do.
You're talking really big. You couldn't reach the target that you set for yourself. 53 points, and we heard Question say that's the highest in the Bono region. Well, I'm informing you that's the highest so far across the country by way of regional qualifiers so far. That must be really impressive. And this is not even what you envisage for yourself. What is the secret this year? I mean, have you taken some herbs or something?
Oh no, St. James is always the best in the whole nation. I see. Whatever we prepare for, we achieve. So once this year we have chosen to prepare for the NSMQ, obviously we must be able to take the championship, both at the regional stage and at the national stage. So setting targets and achieving them are our goal this year. And this year, though we haven't been able to take this particular one, as we are moving forward, we'll be able to do more. We promise.
And already you are making huge promises. This year you are taking the regional championship.
Yes.
Last year in Kranza SHTS, I mean, stunned you guys, and Susek eventually took it. This year, that's going to be different?
Oh, surprises are always inevitable. But this year, we are going to make calculated plans to make sure that whatever is thrown at us, we would have a counter plan.
Are you sure your boys are supporting?
Oh, yes, yes.
Are you sure? I'll take four. And so those are the boys from St. James Minor Seminary here in the Bono region, and they have won the very first contest in the second day of qualifiers in the region. They beat off competition from Goka SHS here in the Bono region, Sumaman SHS, and Our Lady of Providence. They are on their way to the national championship. Well, before that, there's also the regional championship, and last year they lost that to in Kranza SHTS. So you're hearing them say that this year they are going to do magic and retain their trophy right here in Sunyane. We're looking forward to seeing how all of that will pan out. For now, though, there have been at least 8 qualifiers really across the country, and we've seen schools in the Bono region. Sunyane SHS qualify with 41 points, Drobo SHS qualify with 27 points, Notre Dame Girls SHS 44 points, Brikum SHS with 32 points, and elsewhere in the Western region we saw Archbishop Porter Girls qualify with 47 points, the day's highest set of scores in the country. And then Adiambra SHS with 36, and of course Sekendi College with 44 points. Today we've just started, and St. James has shown the way with 53 points. Will that score be beaten today, whether here in the Bono region?
And thanks for staying with us here on The Pulse.